Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. In the last part we start off the Shadow Temple, now we're going to continue through it. Not finish it, though. This is technically the first dungeon that's going to take us 3 parts. With that said, it still takes about the time span of 2 normal parts just because we end off like 2 minutes away from the boss fight. The Shadow Temple is probably the most puzzle-based area in the game that we've seen thus far, at least, as there's actually a lot to do here. Between all the obvious floors, walls, and enemies we're going to be seeing or missing using the Lens of Truth, there are a lot of areas like this where we have silver rupees right out of the ice cavern. In fact, I think this place has the most silver rupee rooms out of any area in the game, at like 2 or 3, I think? Though I might be thinking one of those might just be a kill them all enemy room. Either way, be careful of the twin Reaper sides here, as they hurt. They don't instant kill you like I thought they would as a kid, because... Dad, how did I dodge that? I didn't realize that when I was shooting the footage. How did I not dodge that? Or how did I dodge that, rather? Collision. Sometimes it's wonky. Especially in this era of gaming. Into the early PS2 era, now that I think about it even. Even nowadays, it's still hit or miss. Now, we've been left and right, technically north and south in this room, so it's time for us to finally head in the next direction, east. As soon as that BMO stops firing, as that is an actual wall, but you need to bomb it to get rid of it. Nothing too complicated there. I do like how the general methodology that most Zelda's games come down to is, if there's no way forward, blow shit up. It'll probably work. This, I believe, is the... Okay, no, this is sort of the first room where we have Lens of Truth enemies. There's no way you can know these Skulltulas are coming unless you have the Skull of Truth... the Eye of Truth up and can see the holes in the ceiling. With that said, it's Skulltulas. They don't hurt that much. And they usually drop pretty good health, too. Still, a little bit of hesitance can get you, and patience can get you places if you're not rushing. Also, this place is just a pure torture pit. I forget if this was ever confirmed or if this was still just ever a theory, that this area was where the royal family sent their, like, highest tier criminals to be tortured. And there's a lot of evidence for it, including just guillotines and other death traps that are unusually blunt for the royal family. Oh, and also there's a wall master, but it's only on this platform, so if you jump to the next one, it won't show up. Also, the big Goron sword one-shots them, which feels great. Now we're coming up on the first actual split path of the dungeon here, where we can head left, but it's purely for a Skulltula. If you're just here to actually beat the dungeon, I'm surprised I hit that bubble, you want to head to the right onto the falling and raising platform. Also, hi, Stalfos. Yeah, I like you in the wall. How about you stay there forever? The rule of thumb with this dungeon really does come down to quote a certain Disney Channel theme song from the late 2000s, everything is not what it seems. If there's ever a place where you're looking like you're stuck, just mess around with the Lens of Truth. Usually, it'll help you find exactly what you need to find. But we do want to be careful in this room, as you can hear it, but you can't see it. There is another Reaper statue in here in the center, but it can only be seen through the Lens of Truth. This isn't a silver rupee room, though, like the size would imply. This is a room where you have to kill every enemy. While the obvious like is easy to kill, I'll be real, this room can take a while, upwards of over a minute, just to get, just to open the door, just because there's keys that you need to kill all over the place, and they can be pretty specific to kill, so let's just speed this room up in a moment, so we're not waiting here for the full minute. Plus, the 22-ish minutes is, like, my general sweet spot for video length. Also, don't be like me. I don't know why I do it in this game in particular, but I have a big habit of using the hookshot to kill keys. When they're not on the walls, you really should be using the bone arrow, as the bone arrow is a lot faster to hit the enemy compared to the hookshot, which has a much longer wind-up period. So you're much more likely to miss if you use the hookshot. If they're not on the wall, that is. If they're off the wall, yeah, use the bow. And in here we got 1, 2 chests and a gold skulltula. And there is 2 chests, just get to make sure the other one's there. Bundle arrows isn't too bad though, as backtracking out of any dungeon is just annoying in this game. Barring one occasion, but we won't see that for another few parts. Also, if you ever see me unsure of something like that, it's usually because either due to the fidelity I'm playing the game at, or general weirdness, the textures are confusing me, as it makes me think there might be a Lens of Truth wall or bummable wall there. As that is another way you can tell that there's a Lens of Truth fake wall in some places. Sometimes the textures don't quite line up, sometimes there's a slightly different coloration. There are ways to notice those walls if you just have very keen eyes. But a lot of the time there are those that are just outright walls with no collision, so you just need to know they're there. You also don't need to spend your time on the Stealthos, because once you get to the next platform, it'll just try and follow you and then die. Alright. Oh, that was just bad timing. For those who missed what happened there, I thought I was falling into the pit no matter what at that point, so I was just mashing buttons. Just because, gotta wait for myself to respawn and all that. However, I actually managed to grab onto the ledge of the block, for about a frame because of my mashing buttons. I yelled at myself when that happened. Oh, hey, look, more silver rupees. My favorite. Heavy, heavy sarcasm. It's weird seeing the silver rupees, though, as first off, in other games, they just became an amount of currency, if I recall correctly. I think about 100 rupees, I want to say, is what they became. But I don't think they're nearly this common in Majora. I think Majora's Mask just relies more on actual puzzles, as well as using your masks in clever ways. Speaking of, you have to be a bit clever, in this room we got 2 gigantic ceiling death traps. I believe if you get squished by them, it's not pure damage. I think it's technically considered a void out, and you get sent back to the beginning of the room. We need to pull this block, and then push it beneath the spike traps to stop them from falling. For a few reasons. One, as you can hear, there's a gold skulltula in this room, and it's in that gate just to my left. But also, in order to get the 3 chests in this room, you need to position this in a way that it stops both traps, and then use the tops of the traps as platforms. Something that took young me far too long to figure out, even with the strategy guide. I wasn't exactly the smartest kid, as I've gone over several times before. Something I've always liked about the Shadow Temple, though, first off, I do really like this music. And this is the song, by the way, I was foreshadowing a bit earlier at the Fire Temple that I believe they used as the basis for the new mix of the Fire Temple theme after they got rid of the chanting in 1.2 onwards. There's just something about the tone of the music mixed with the graininess of the graphics that works well for the almost horror-like aesthetics they're bringing here. It's actually one of the few times I think that the 3DS version's enhanced graphics actually kind of makes the atmosphere actively worse, which doesn't happen too often, as the 3DS version's presentation between the higher frame rate and otherwise is generally just more interesting, as it makes some of the areas prettier looking, makes some of the seam lines less obvious, makes the world overall feel more like it's one whole thing rather than several areas with flat textured walls. Which, don't get me wrong, that still happens in some places, as while I think they built the game from the ground up for 3D, there's still times where it's obvious that they just borrowed code from the N64 game and refurbished it, so to speak. There's only really one other active occasion where the atmosphere in the 3DS version, due to better lighting, is just worse, and we won't see that until the finale of the LP, which 2 weeks-ish out, a week-ish out. Actually, now that I think about it, closer to 2 weeks maybe. We're getting there, as at this point in the game, while there are still some side quests left, they're usually really short, done in less than 2-minute ones. At this point, we only have the rest of this dungeon, the next temple, the final dungeon, and that's really it for plot stuff. That is, I guess, one problem I have with Ocarina of Time as well. I think its pacing is a bit uneven. At least in terms of the endgame stuff, because once you finish the final temple, you're just kind of, oh, hi, endgame, endgame, endgame. There's no real build-up to the endgame when we get to it. There's like one cutscene that's like, oh, hey, you're in the endgame now. Whereas other Zelda games onwards, there's like a whole hunt you have to go on, or in part a time where you have to backtrack to all the previous areas to finish up for the next area. Which I know some people call padding. I call it alright, because I understand that it's part of the story structuring thing. Oh yeah, that's the thing. There's hidden spikes in this room on the floor, but for some reason the hover boots allow you to walk over them. I don't get why, but we have another Silver Rupee room. My favorite. This is probably the room in this dungeon where the hookshot positioning has to be the most precise, as there are times where you need to hookshot onto targets like that. And sometimes in order to get another Silver Rupee moving forward, you need to be very precise, not only about where you hit the target, but what angle you're going at. As sometimes it's a bit hard to tell with the hookshot what angle you're going to go at once you hit it. Once you hit the target, rather. As sometimes you just go straight onto it, whereas other times it feels like your angle isn't going the way you're pointing. I don't know exactly how to describe it beyond that. It just doesn't feel accurate. Mind you, based off the momentum alone of the hookshot, we should be having our arms broken every time we've used it, if I recall correctly. But who gives a shit? It's a video game. Am I calling out one particular YouTuber? Yes, yes I am. I'm doing this Silver Rupee especially wrong, by the way. I actually had the perfect lineup right where I was a moment ago, as you can hookshot to the target in the corner to get this rupee rather than doing what I'm doing. Or you could do the other thing and just hover boots over to it, which, you know what, that works too. This is the first of a few rooms like this throughout the dungeon where there's just a gigantic skull pot. Though, out of those rooms like this is the only one I think that's outright required. Why? Well, you might remember a certain jar in a certain town way early on in the game. We gotta bomb this jar. I think the only way you can tell to do this is either by a Navi hint, or there might be a place somewhere in this room that hints towards you doing that, like, talk to the walls and they'll give you a hint or something like that. Because you don't even need to bomb it to open that door, you just need to kill the enemies to do that. What we need to do this for is because once this blows up, it reveals a key. But more importantly for my 100% quest, besides, you know, beating the game, there is a gold Skulltula in this room. And I like getting those. We're getting relatively close to the end of the Skulltulas, too. I think this was like number 80... 83, I think, for my file. Technically speaking, if you got every Skulltula as early as you could, it would be 84, as you might recall. And for those who missed this when I said this, if you go for every Skulltula as soon as you can actually be one higher than I am. As right where Hyrule Castle was in the past, there's another Skulltula over there you can get at any time once you get the hookshot. I'm just saving it for later for narrative reasons. This room gave me some problems as a kid. This is going to have several giant fans that push you around. With the normal boots, it just blows you backwards and you have to start the area over again. There's several fans in a row. You can make it with the time they stop if you just roll enough and use your weapons well enough. With the hover boots, you get blown so far back it's ridiculous, but the best way to go about this is just to use the iron boots because you're immune to the wind while doing so. As a kid, I used to hover boots over this, but there's just this ceiling rod there you can hookshot onto. I used to think that was only, I think, in 3D. But no, 3DS, that's there because it's there in this version. Also, don't shoot that eye switch. It's not a real eye switch. We're taking a note out of a certain dungeon in A Link to the Past now. Certain silver eye switches can also shoot fire at you if their eyes start closed. With that said, while they are technically enemies, they can't be killed. Because, inanimate object, I guess. I do like how this dungeon gives you hints as you go through it, though, through elements such as that wall that Navi wants me to talk to. It's a good way of naturally introducing hints without having to rely on the game's partner that you've had throughout the game. And even then, I'm usually a fan enough of the partner system because I like... Navi's not as bad as some people say, I think, as long as you don't listen to her every time she just goes, "Hey!" Tattle is harmless. King of Red Lions is probably the best one in terms of how much he interrupts you because he only interrupts you if you need him to. Barring actual story instances. Midna's pretty good about it, though in the early game it's a bit more tedious to go back to just because she has to explain the mechanics to you again. Fee is probably the worst of it we ever got, despite me liking her as a character. Mostly because I like her theme music. Now, this is a room that stumped me a bit as a kid. By the way, in the last room, you just need to use the hover boots to use the momentum of the fan to your advantage. As there's a locked door here. You kill the Gibdos. You open the chest. That's not a small key. And I guess young me didn't have the compass at this point, because you can notice there's a chest in this room. It's just below this dirt like the one chest was in the bottom of the well. And it's also invisible, because, I guess the world is just out to get us, or something along those lines. I don't know why I found that so hard to do as a kid. It is interesting to see how developers go about designing games that have a younger audience in mind versus an older audience in mind, especially those that have shared audiences. Like, I know people will try to defend some games as, "Oh, come on, it's for kids." Yeah, but Paper Mario Sticker Star was for kids, and there's puzzles in that stump people older than me. That game was a mess of design. Whereas, I think Wind Waker is a good game for kids, as its puzzles are challenging enough even for adults, but it also has the right theming for kids to have some ideas put into their head of, oh, maybe the villain's not such a bad guy after all, or other games like that. I'm very tired of it's for kids as an excuse for bad design. It's one thing for simpler design, like, Ape Escape is technically a kid's series, you know, it's just outright is a kid's series, and it's a simpler series. Triforce Heroes, simpler game, but made for kids, so it makes sense. But it's also a good game, as long as you have friends. It's just one of those things I've always gotten tired of, or gotten more tired of in recent years compared to when I was even younger. I think there may have been a point where I defended the it's for kids argument even way back in the channel's lifespan when I was an edgy high schooler. Which is one of the reasons I actually kind of want to read. It's one of the reasons I also redo some of my LPs later on. And one of the reasons I really want to redo my Minish Cap LP is just because high school me was odd, I think is the way to put it. Not the best time period of my life, mentally, for one thing. But also, I just had no idea what I was talking about a lot of the time. Not that I do now, but I make it sound like I know what I'm talking about. This is one of the more unique set pieces in the dungeon, though. There's a shortcut there you can open all the way back to the first Scythe room, but you might notice there's also Navi flying over there in green. Play Scarecrow's song, and Pierre shows up, allowing us to get the fourth sculpture in the dungeon. Ah, Bob! But the unique set piece I'm talking to is to my right, that giant ship, which had its design completely overhauled for 3DS, where they gave it like a Grim Reaper front and shit. It's super cool looking. Though it's admittedly a relatively minor set piece as it's only in this room and is only active for about a minute. You see, once we play Zelda's Lullaby on it, it's going to start moving. To the left. Slowly. It's cool, but it's very slow. They do something to keep it interesting, but it's something we've seen before, to say the least. Also, I find it odd that they don't play the jingle there for the staff showing up. Huh. I guess that counts as a cutscene. But yeah, they throw, I think, 2 Stalfos at you to just keep this ride interesting. But if you use the Bigoron Sword spin attack, as you can see, you can very often hit them before they even get a chance to move. So, not much of a threat. Also, why is this boat here? It's cool, but why is it here? Although, actually, now that I think about it, this is supposed to be, like, part of the graveyard of the royal family and where they keep the prisoners. Is this supposed to be like a boat to ferry the royal family to the inner portions of the prison for reasons? That's dark. And also me probably reading way too into it, Chief. Now here's the thing. The end of the dungeon, if you look at the map, is just to the south of us. However, we don't have the boss key yet, so we need to make a trek west first in order to get that. Link, the ship is sinking! Abandoned ship! Get onto a safe platform! Oh no, it's not like I was already on it, and I find the way that that ship falls just really funny. Because there's not even water down there, I think. It's just like a river of fog? Oh, hey, Floor Masters. I've always hated this room just because I find it tedious to walk through. As there's 4 walls that you can only see with the lens of truth, and you just need to go around in a spiral pattern to get around it. It's just annoying. Don't even bother with the Floor Masters in the actual area, by the way, as they are not worth your time or effort. And here we have an invisible Floor Master, which is surprisingly annoying. You see, the thing is about Ocarina and Majora's Mask is you can only have one item using your magic power at a time. For instance, I can only have the Lens of Truth out, and I can't use the spin attack with the little ring around it while that's out, as it'd be 2 things using my magic power. And that's a very annoying limitation that only comes into play like 3 times, and I hate it. I mean, really? You couldn't have just made it so I can use 2 at once? We do get a small key, though. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 29, we're going to be finishing off the Shadow Temple before seeing what happens after it. See you guys then.